Well, good morning and welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. I'm Renee Williams and I'm here with my co-host Billy Thomas, and we both work in the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources with the University of Kentucky. And we have another show that's just jam-packed full of knowledge. That's the way I like to put it, Billy.
Renee, I totally agree. I am so excited about these shows and the content that we're able to kind of get out and share. And, our team is really working hard to put together some really great segments for you all out there. So we really appreciate y'all joining us each week. Whether you join us via Facebook Live or via Zoom, we're delighted to have you with us. As a reminder, you can interact with us via the chat pod in Zoom, or you can leave comments on Facebook Live and we'll respond as quickly as possible. But, Renee, I'm really excited to hear about this new kind of a newer program, to me at least, this Cooking Wild that Matt Springer will be talking about with some folks from Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah, definitely. So if Dr. Springer would like to get on, and he can tell us a little bit about the segment we're going to show.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of run through a Cook Wild Kentucky. It's a really great joint effort that kind of has come out of the nutrition education program here at UK, as well as Greg Renthrow over at Animal Science in the meat science department, and a little bit with Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. And then I somehow got involved. I don't know how, but it's a good thing. So I got a little summary that we put together with Becky Wallen at Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources, who unfortunately, because of it being a state holiday today, couldn't join us.
Yeah. I was going to say, Matt, mentioning a state holiday, I would like to wish a happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans out there. Thank you all so much for your service. We greatly appreciate that. You help make this country great, so thank you very much. All right. So without any further ado, Renee, I can pull up Matt and Becky's video segment.
Good morning. Today, I'm lucky enough to have Becky Wallen with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources here to talk about a program that has just got off the ground as a partnership between Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources, KDFWR, UK Cooperative Extension on a couple different fronts. The program name is actually called Cook Wild Kentucky, and it links very nicely with what you're in charge of, Becky, correct? First off, good morning and thank you for being here. But why don't you tell us a little bit about why you're here and what you do, and why we should all care?
Thanks, Matt. Thank you for having me. So the programs that I coordinate for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife is the Field to Fork program and the Hunter's Legacy program, which is the same program but in the college, in some of the universities across the state. And I've been fortunate enough to be a part of the Cook Wild Kentucky project with folks like Jan Nappage and Dr. Greg Renfro, as we've been developing some really cool recipes and some other resources that are helping people access clean wild protein and getting it on the table. So it's been really fun so far, and we've got a really good foundation and more to come with Cook Wild Kentucky.
I'm excited. I think the recipes are really good, and we'll get into them. And go ahead. I know you got a little bit of why do we care about this, and what's the role of hunters and getting that food on the table. So you want to walk us? I mean, there's a lot going on here. You want to walk us through a little bit?
Yeah, these are just a couple of points I wanted to talk about, and how hunting is conservation, and why that should matter to folks. Something that is not necessarily always common knowledge is that wildlife conservation efforts in Kentucky and across the nation are primarily funded through the sales of hunting and license for hunting and fishing licenses. So that money goes towards not just the typical species that you think of that are targeted for hunting and fishing, but also things like our pollinators and our bats and our salamanders. So everybody is, the hunters and anglers are really footing the bill for those types of projects.
The over 500 wildlife species I think we have in Kentucky, and I don't know how many fish species. It's not my department. I think we reach over 1,000 though, somewhere close to it, I believe.
Yeah, it's a lot for sure. So something else that's pretty interesting is that you can imagine we've got the deer, we've got the elk, we've got these big game species, but we don't have the predators anymore. So wildlife managers are relying on hunters to be the management tool to keep these populations in check so that we don't have things like diseases and people and wildlife problems. And you probably know a lot from the ag side.
It keeps me busy.
Yeah.
And also what almost happened to me yesterday morning, which was hit a deer on the way into work. So
yes, that's an unfortunate, pretty big issue, especially in our northern part of the state where the population's really high. So we've got all of these hunters and anglers out there, and they're not only paying for their hunting and fishing licenses, but they're also contributing to the local economy. And it's actually a $1.5 billion industry in Kentucky. So that's a huge,
pretty substantial. Yeah.
Definitely. When we talk about the numbers, you'll notice my note there on the bottom right bubble there. In the 1900s, we only had 500,000 deer, 100,000 turkey, 41,000 elk, and that was in the whole United States. That was due to unregulated hunting and habitat degradation. But now we have some really great populations, and we have over 908,000 deer in Kentucky alone. And restoration efforts have also brought back the turkeys population to almost just a little bit over 225,000 birds in the state. And then of course, the elk population, which is pretty awesome. We have the biggest population this side of the Mississippi River with over 14,000 elk in Kentucky.
Yes, a source for many other restoration efforts, right? For places like Michigan and Minnesota or Wisconsin, Missouri. So
yes, our successful and healthy herd has definitely been able to give back because we got our elk from other states, and now we're able to kind of give back in a big way with our elk herd.
Yeah. So we mentioned problems, and you mentioned 900,000 plus deer. That's a lot of mouths to feed. And unfortunate. And even with hunting as a management tool, an activity I personally partake in, but I can only utilize about 2 to 3 deer a year for my family and consuming them. Is there options? I mean, there's some farmers that need, that have property that they're farming that they may need to take out 30 or 40 deer to lower the amount of damage they have on the property. There are options so that resource that we fought so hard to conserve doesn't go to waste.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it's the same in my family. We take about 4 deer, and that's all we can take. But if you're interested in continuing to go out into the field, be an active steward of the environment through wildlife management, you can continue to hunt and donate your extra deer to this wonderful program, Hunters for the Hungry. So they're making the connection between the overabundance of deer in the state, the hunters that are interested in going out, or the farmers who need extra deer taken off of their property so that they can maintain their crop, and all of the hungry folks in Kentucky that need protein in their diet. They need to access these resources. So Hunters for the Hungry makes that possible.
Now, as someone that's an active but small participant in the Cook Wild program, this is really kind of where the Cook Wild Kentucky program came from, isn't it? With a lot of folks that were getting donated meat and didn't know what to do with it. And sometimes were even throwing it out because they didn't know how to make it.
Yes, exactly. So the disconnect was noticed. It was brought to the attention of the Kentucky Nutrition Education Program, and Cook Wild was born from that. Let's go ahead. So the first step was, okay, let's teach folks how to use the meat. So we got together and started developing these wild game recipe cards, and they've been tested to make sure that they taste great, but all of the nutrition values are right in line with daily dietary needs. And those are on the back of the cards, all the nutrition breakdown for each recipe. They're super easy to follow, not complicated ingredients, so good. I've had the pleasure of tasting quite a few of them. There's 17 now, and there's more to come for sure.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit? I mean, so we're going to focus on the deer one here in a second, but what are some of the other species there's recipes for that, or potentially on soon to come recipes for?
Yeah, so I know we've got duck and dove, the frog leg recipes, whitefish recipes, rabbit as well, turkey, and I think there's groundhog is on its way. So I'm really excited about that one.
I think there's probably very few people that are excited about that one, but it may open some people up to trying new things.
Yeah, I'm always willing to try new recipes.
I think beaver's on there as well, if I remember correctly, and those are problematic species sometimes. So maybe we can get some folks interested in that.
Yeah, definitely.
So all of these can be found. I see the Plan Eat Move website listed there. So planeatmove.com, which is part of the nutrition education program here at UK. That's their website that has everything listed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's where you can find all the recipes and more. It's all housed there at planeatmove.com. And you can also find all of these recipes at your local extension office. They were sent to every office in the state.
So they'll be in those little cards like we have for the other. Oh, awesome. So they can go to their extension office and request those cards for what they need then. Excellent.
Yep.
So it's a couple days before deer season starts. So why don't we bring up what recipes they may want to go try to get the cards for here and at least throw them in front of folks. Because I think I've had 4 or 5 of these and I've not been disappointed yet.
Right. Same here for sure. We wanted to give a lot of options for venison because that is one of the most accessible meats, especially the donated meats through Hunters for the Hungry. So you got on the left, you got a whole list, a whole variety, anything that you're feeling, anything from a breakfast sausage, the meatballs, the cabbage rolls. Chili is always a crowd favorite, definitely in our house. So I say try all of them. Go for it.
It's definitely a variety and probably more to come because this, as you mentioned, this is probably the number one game species consumed in North America, to be honest. So we talk about eating venison and, maybe some folks are not hunting right now. And they may have some friends that have given them some venison, or maybe they unfortunately had to use the food bank's venison. Is there a way they could potentially look at how they could get their own venison? Here, perfect idea. So how do you go from eating the food to getting we're kind of going in reverse order here, where you're coming home with venison usually, and then you get to the food. Now we're talking about getting the food. How do we get to the other parts?
Yeah, good question. So if you're really excited about wild game meat and you want it to be on your table and share it with your friends and family, you may be interested in trying hunting for yourself. So there are a couple of educational opportunities in the state. This is the Field to Fork program that I mentioned that I coordinate for Kentucky. We host public workshops all across the state. And they not only teach you how to hunt and everything that leads up to the hunt, but what do you do after you've been successful in harvesting an animal? So how do you get the meat from the field to your Subaru to your table, right? And how do you trim it up and package it and save it for the future? And then cooking and eating, it all goes together in one nice program.
So you're basically in charge of, so we have the conservation camps for the kids. This is now like adult conservation camp, right? So if they have any interest in outdoor activities, whether it be hunting or fishing, this is the program that they want to look into.
For sure. Yes. And we do have the sister program, Hook and Cook, same thing, how to fish, how to tie a knot, what bait to use, where to go, and then how to fillet the fish once you've caught them.
Excellent.
Yeah. So right now we have the Field to Fork program for deer, turkey, squirrel, and dove. Squirrel being the newest program, we've been able to have one workshop paired with a mentored hunt on public land. And it's just been a really fun time watching this program grow, going out on these mentored hunts with folks that need that first hunt opportunity paired with an experienced mentor in the field to help answer questions or offer any guidance that they need. And we'll hopefully get back to in-person programs here pretty soon.
Yeah, you've been a little limited with COVID, and you guys have been putting on webinars on that I think you can find from your links in the Field to Fork program, and they're regularly occurring. Now, one of the things that we have going here, that's the other part of your title, right? So you're the coordinator for Field to Fork, but you're also the coordinator for the Legacies program. You want to briefly touch on that in case there's some folks here at the university or any of these other universities that are paying attention, maybe their children are at those universities.
Yeah, definitely. If you're going to one of these universities, or if you know someone that is, you can find us on campus at any of these 6 locations. And it's the same program, but for the university students, we just package it in a way that is better for them to coordinate with their schedules, because we know the academic year is kind of hectic, and we have a good time. So reach out to us.
Yeah, or if you're at UK, reach out to me, because I'm the one that kind of coordinates our activities here. And we have had 2 hunts, 3 hunts, 2 hunts, 1 turkey and one deer hunt, and had some folks and students that are continuing on and buying hunting licenses and putting food on their table and love the experience. And it's a great opportunity to learn with your peers, and I always enjoy it too. So
yeah, super fun. So if anybody's interested in any of the upcoming events, here's some places to kind of check in and follow. All of the registration for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife events can be found at fw.ky.gov under the education tab. And we have our own little spot called Learn to Hunt, Fish, and Shoot. So if you're interested in any of those activities, visit our webpage there. And then, of course, the nutrition education program, we put the Plan, Eat, Move website up a little bit earlier. But I will say right now, they're doing Cook Wild Wednesdays. It's a Facebook Live event every Wednesday from now through mid-December. So it's at noon every day on their Facebook page, which is the Kentucky Nutrition Education Program Facebook page. Make sure you tune in live and check those out. We also have representatives from the agency there to help answer questions about anything wildlife related.
And we can support that here on this show because our show runs from 11 to noon, so it's not competing with us. So
perfect. That was probably on purpose. And then if you're an agent, a cooperative extension agent, and you're interested in hosting Field to Fork or Hook and Cook programs in your county, we could definitely use your help. And we're providing instructor training opportunities this January. On the 27th, 28th, and 29th, we'll have a 3-day virtual training program for you. So make sure you register and come get on board with Field to Fork and Hook and Cook.
Now, real quick, I'm going to bring this up because you talked to our extension agents here. And you mentioned when you do the mentored hunts, it was on public property. Are you exclusively doing the mentored hunts on public property, or if there's private property, will you use private property? My thought being that if there's some farmers or producers that have deer problems, would this be a potential avenue to help try to control those issues and while engaging new hunters in the same time?
Yes, thank you, Matt. We definitely we would love to contact be in contact with any private landowner that needed some deer taken off the property. We've done that in the past, been highly successful. It's been a great experience for the new hunters. And we work with the landowners to make sure everything is, that we're staying out of the cow fields and taking does if they're interested in doe management, things like that.
Yeah, I don't think there's too many of these new hunters that are picky about what size buck they're going to shoot. Usually they're just happy with whatever they can harvest and get that nice organic meat on the table.
Exactly. It's all about the meat. So, yeah.
Well, Becky, I think we're about out of time. I guess contact info is right there if you need to get a hold of her. And she talked about, the Field to Fork program, and you can just, to be honest, probably the easiest way to find you is Googling Field to Fork, Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. I appreciate your time talking about the program, a little bit about Cook Wild Kentucky. Is there any ending notes you want to say? Last comments here to folks?
No, I appreciate you allowing me to take some time up today to talk about the program. And I hope to make a few new contacts from this. And I just appreciate your time.
Well, thanks again, Becky. And I will be here because I don't have a holiday tomorrow. They took away that holiday. So I'd be happy to take any questions you have now on the program. I can speak for, I think, a good bit of it with a little bit of the involvement I've had. If not, I can always throw Becky under the bus.
Yeah, that'll work.
Well, thank you, Matt. We greatly appreciate that video. And, this past weekend, my family and I just needed to get out, right? And so we were driving. We just thought, well, we'll drive, towards Cincinnati way. And it was a while when we started seeing all these deer that were dead along the side of the road. And we finally my daughter started counting. She goes, there's another one, and we counted over 22 deer. And that was before I'm sure there's probably 25 or 30. It just looks like there's a lot of deer on the side of the roads now. And so I guess it's because our deer populations are going up a lot.
Well, it's two parts, right? So you went through an area that we have an extremely high deer density. So the populations are really high. We call it the triangle, right? So between Cincinnati, Lexington, and Louisville, that area has very high deer numbers. It's also, and this carries through to the entire state, it's also the rut. So it's mating season, and deer are very active 24 hours a day. Those male deer have one thing on their mind, so they just go. So they're not really thinking about crossing the road and the safety involved with that. So they're just very active and kind of not thinking straight. So if you're driving right now in rural areas that have high deer numbers, you need to be very attentive to what's going on around you, because it is unfortunate that we have about 3,400 deer vehicle collisions a year in Kentucky, and some of those can be quite dangerous. So definitely want to be paying attention and be a little bit more careful.
So remember to put your questions in the chat pod if you have any. But Matt, one thing I noticed is that what I really liked is that they're actually showing people how to do this. I think, as we've kind of gotten away from that as a society and showing people how to do it, because they might be, kind of worried about actually doing that and not having any kind of training or what have you. And so it's like, how young can you start your children doing this in these programs?
Well, so the program is really geared to adults, and that's mostly for folks that didn't have an opportunity growing up. Historically, it was usually your family members showed you how to hunt or took you out hunting, and now in society, as you mentioned, a lot of us don't have that. So this was kind of, and this is a nationwide push where they're trying to involve as many people as possible and get them interested in pursuing hunting and fishing. And getting that opportunity for wild game on their table. But there is no limit in terms of age. So if you want to take your child to the program, think the child has interest in the program, this is an option. There's also the conservation camps that Fish and Wildlife holds every summer to get them involved. And you can look those up on their page. But it's definitely, if you have interest and your child has interest, this is a great outlet to get involved together and learn how to partake in this recreational opportunity. One that can put some really tasty food on the table.
Yeah, a lot of those recipes looked rather tasty. So.
It all looked good. Matt, the comment pod, somebody was saying they donated to Dare to Care, which must be another kind of group out of Bernheim.
Yeah, so that I see that 6,000. When you're talking about 3 tons of fresh protein to people that really need it, it's a substantial amount. And that Hunters for the Hungry donates anywhere close to, usually about 50,000 pounds of venison every year in Kentucky alone. So it's a wonderful program that helps helps farmers that are dealing with maybe too many deer on their property and gets that meat to somebody that really does need it, that doesn't have the opportunity right now, or is maybe a little bit in distress. So it's a wonderful program that you have are looking for donations to support. They could always use the donations.
We did have another question that says hunters on his land only want to kill male deer, and will this control deer populations?
So Scott, unfortunately it won't. The deer populations are driven mostly by adult females. So you need to have them, if you want to lower deer populations, you need to have them harvest adult does. and at large numbers, unfortunately. There's opportunities to have discussions with them about how you want to do that and ask them to do that. There's other ways that if if you're giving free access, you can tell them there's landowners that will do an earn a buck program where they can't shoot a buck until they shoot 1, 2, or 3 does. There's farm leasing where they can actually put in the contract that you have to harvest does on the property. You can't just use it as a buck only opportunity. So it's one that when I have folks that talk about this, and this is a very common problem, that have an open discussion with the folks that are hunting your property, let them know your concerns and what your desires are. And you are the landowner, so in many ways you get final say. And if they're in a hunt lease, you can always renegotiate that lease to get your goals accomplished.
Matt, I'm wondering, as another angle, would be controlling kind of the density of the population help the overall size of those remaining individuals?
Absolutely, Billy. That's a wonderful point, that you want to have a lower, what we call a buck to doe ratio. So the number of males to females present on the property, because it creates a healthier herd, and a healthier herd means bigger bodied animals, which means bigger antlers. Mm-hmm. So that's the point you can always bring up with them.
Yeah, use that as a selling point. Yes.
Yeah. Excellent.
Well, Matt, great job, and thank Becky again for us. We really appreciate having her. We'll have to get her back. She's pretty dynamic.
She really wanted to be here, and she's quite appreciative of just giving the attention and great partner and a great program. I wish I would have had the nutrition education program here as well, and just didn't work out.
Hey, well, again, in my mind, this is another great example of how extension can be involved and really kind of help address natural resource issues here in the state. And I appreciate your involvement with Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife and all of our agents that are supporting this as well. So again, just another nice success story for extension here in Kentucky.
Agreed.
All right. Well, moving on. We have an invasive species coming.
I know, Renee, in this one, if you live in central Kentucky, you have seen this. And
if you don't have it,
if you don't have it in your yard,
you're lucky.
Yeah, you consider yourself lucky, but certainly it is causing a lot of damage to our woodlands here in central Kentucky, and it's spreading beyond. It really is. This is a shrub species that was introduced because we thought it might be good for wildlife, and it had attractive flowers, but what we have found out is there's some problems with it. And we got, this is a video, we've got Dr. Ellen Crocker and Dr. Jacob Muller, along with another person from the college, has put together this video. And Renee, I didn't know, do you want to go ahead and just play the video?
Yeah, we can go ahead and play the video.
Okay, excellent. All right, so stand by. This is another high quality video coming from our Forestry and Natural Resources Extension team.
Bush honeysuckle grows as a dense, multi-stemmed shrub. Here's a smaller bush honeysuckle right here, but they can grow up to 15 feet tall, and those large plants can look like small trees. The leaves of bush honeysuckle are one of the first things to come out in the spring, and it's one of the last plants to lose its leaves in the fall, giving it extra time to get energy that a lot of our native plants don't have. So one of the reasons why it's so competitive. Those leaves are opposite to each other and oblong in shape. And one of the distinguishing features about the invasive bush honeysuckles, the non-native Asian varieties, is that those stems will be hollow on the inside. So if you look, cut them in half, you'll see a hollow center. Bush honeysuckle has white to creamy yellow flowers that are fragrant in the spring, maybe May and April. In the fall, it'll produce red berries. Bush honeysuckle can also impact wildlife. So birds love the berries, but they come at a different time than most of our native berries. So not only is it shifting the nutritional value that's available to them, but also the habitat. So bush honeysuckle grows in a really dense shrubby layer. And because of that, it's going to outcompete native plants for light, whether they're regeneration of trees that you want to see or wildflowers on your forest floor. It was introduced for a variety of uses as a landscape plant, an ornamental one, as well as for erosion control. And sadly, it doesn't stay put and it spreads out from there. The berries that it has are favored by birds and can be carried long distances, resulting in new bush honeysuckle popping up everywhere in your woodland. Bush honeysuckle, like many invasive plants, takes advantage of disturbances and increased light. So right here, we've got some gaps in the canopy. Those are from dead trees, trees that died, and now we can see a snag there. Not only is that added light a real benefit for bush honeysuckle to take off, but it also is something to consider in your management as you're planning that you've also got some big standing dead trees that you need to be careful around. Bush honeysuckle can tolerate a wide range of habitats, and because of this, it's really a threat across the state. Historically, it was thought that it was going to be restricted to the central Kentucky soils, and it's densest in central and northern Kentucky right now, but it can spread out from there and be a problem in lots of different settings, under different light conditions and in different soils.
If you find and identify bush honeysuckle early on, you can have some success with hand pulling. Additionally, if it's a small area, you will be effective in controlling it to a certain degree. If it's a larger area, then we'll need to have more of a strategy. Mechanical treatments tend to have marginal effects when you're trying to treat a large area. And so combining that with an herbicide treatment really increases your success of eradicating the bush honeysuckle. Two chemicals are generally used, glyphosate and triclopyr, to control the bush honeysuckle. Generally, foliar application tends to work the best, as well as cut stump and treating the stump with a higher concentration of the herbicide.
So we may be then needing to use the chainsaw as part of our strategy and tactics to deal with the different sizes of bush honeysuckle that are there in the area that we're responsible for clearing. So we have a few of the other tools we'll be using. So we happen to have a nice floating saw, silky saw. There's the other saws we can use. So of course then we can take out and cut some of the smaller or some of the smaller and larger ones, larger stems. Bypass pruners. And if we're doing all this, we don't want them to resprout, because then we come back in a couple years and it may look like we haven't done anything. So we want to do stump treatment. And this has a dye marker, so we know which stems we've treated. And it's a 50% concentrate. We diluted in half, glyphosate that we can a Roundup formulation or any of the glyphosates.
It's important to do some follow-up treatment. Go in and pull seedlings. As we know, bush honeysuckle is a great resprouter, and so it's important to stay on top of your management. Generally, this isn't a one-time, one-entry treatment, but it's a multiple treatment going in and pulling seedlings after treatment and really making sure that you are able to control the species. It's important to think about managing bush honeysuckle in the context of your overall management strategy and your management objectives. Sometimes that might mean focusing on a particular area to treat if that aligns with your overall goals for that area. And it's so important, as with any management plan, is to stay engaged with that plan, to come back, to monitor, to make sure that you're meeting your management objectives, whatever those might be, and however you might include bush honeysuckle management in those management objectives.
I want to thank all three of you for doing that. Ellen and Jacob, if you want to get your cameras on, we greatly appreciate it. But that was a great video, and bush honeysuckle is something that just seems to be everywhere, and people, actually still sell this, right? As well, you can actually buy it, and that's probably not something you want to do, and you may not even know that it's not the right one.
Yeah, it's true. I don't see it for sale as much anymore, but it's still, you can sell it and people have it in their home landscapes, and they might love it in their home landscape. And there, it might actually grow enough that you'd think it was a small tree. It can have this form like that that's really broad on the top, and it's hardy and it grows well in a lot of sites, but it doesn't stay put. So not only will it take over your yard, and especially like along fence areas where you're not mowing, it will spread into the woods and natural areas. So birds eat those berries and they move them. So definitely something that you want to be thinking about, not just the impact it's having in your yard, but what's happening outside of that space. And I think that's one of the challenges with invasive species in general, is that, it might be fine in your yard, but it doesn't stay put.
Yeah, I know I've had it in my yard before, and just like Jacob said, you actually have to take care of it year after year because it'll just keep coming back. And so what's the best way to make sure that you get rid of it totally?
Well, I think, just as we indicated in the video, is really just repeat treatments and monitoring. So once you do treat the area, whether it's large or small, making sure that you treat the stumps and continually come back and make sure that it's not resprouting. And over time, you'll probably see less and less, and hopefully eventually you'll have it under control.
How many years do you think that takes that you have to keep looking?
It's hard to say.
because you might have managed it, but your neighbors didn't.
Exactly.
So I think, unfortunately, in our area, that cat is out of the bag,
Yeah.
and bush honeysuckle is all through the woods.
Yeah.
So even once you've gotten your property under control, making sure that it doesn't come in again and do the same thing is really important, because then you're back to square one, which is not where you want to be. So I think, but now is a good time to be looking for it, because bush honeysuckle, one of the reasons why it's so successful is that it has its leaves on longer than a lot of our native plants. So it's one of the first things to put its leaves on in the spring, and one of the last to lose them in the fall. So right now, when everything else has lost its leaves, you can see bush honeysuckle, you can see with its berries, really sticking out. And it's actually a good time for management if you want to be treating those cut stumps, as we showed in the video. There are a lot of different ways to manage it, and we're emphasizing that option because I think with bush honeysuckle and a lot of invasive shrubs, you've really got to kill that whole root system. If you don't, you might as well not have done anything, or you're going to have to really repeat that on a regular basis, year after year after year, to see any kind of impact. So either pulling it out and getting all of that root system, or cutting it and then treating with a systemic herbicide will get you that what you want to kill that whole plant. Otherwise, those roots are just going to send up new shoots. They're going to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Just another gentle reminder to folks, the best thing you can do is really kind of be familiar with your property, scout your property on a regular basis, and stop those infestations from becoming huge, right? It's so much easier to control just a few plants than it is the whole hillside. So. Ellen and Jacob, I was thinking one of the extra challenges we have with bush honeysuckle is homeowners really value it. It provides privacy and screen and, fragrant flowers and stuff like that. So they really value those attributes of it. But just trying to get that message across to them that it's also kind of causing damage throughout the environment is a challenge.
Yeah, and I think it's tough for a lot of us that grew up with honeysuckle, like sipping the nectar out of the flowers, and have this vision of honeysuckle as a good thing, and having that shift in your mindset of wait, but the woods are green, isn't that a good thing? And that's wait a minute, no, none of that is what I want in my woods. And it's true for a lot of different invasive plants, whether we're talking about honeysuckle or privet or burning bush. And a lot of those species, they became invasive because we like them, because we like some of the things that we do. But now we kind of know better. And I think it's an example to me of the benefits of gardening and landscaping with native species, as well as those that we know aren't going to be invasive. So we can't always know, in hindsight's 2020, but at least now we do know with some of these, and we can avoid their use in the landscape setting.
So they wanted to know what is the best herbicide to use to not hurt trees?
Well, I think, as we mentioned, the glyphosate and being very targeted and specific with your application and treating those stumps, I think you're going to have the best luck with controlling the honeysuckle and avoiding any sort of adverse effects on any of your trees.
And I think when it comes to minimizing your non-target impacts, there are a couple different things that play a role in that. First, there's the timing. Like if you do something right now when everything else has lost its leaves and bush honeysuckle still has it, then you're automatically cutting down the potential other things that could be impacted by it. There's selection of herbicide. So Jacob mentioned glyphosate, and there are others that are going to be less likely to impact other plants that are there. And then there's also the technique that you're using. We showed the cut stump approach where you're cutting it and then you're painting it directly on that because I like that as approach because it really minimizes the amount of herbicide you have to use and it minimizes how much is going to get on other things. But if you were doing, say, a foliar approach, you'd really want to make sure that you're not getting any of that spray on other plants that are nearby, that you maybe time it right so you don't have that, that risk. But those are just a few. And, if you don't want to be using herbicides, there are still options for you. It might be more work and require more continuous monitoring, but you can use pieces of equipment that'll help you pop out that root system and really try to get all of that. Weed wrenches or attachments to various pieces of equipment that'll really let you pull those out. Now, those do damage the site as well, and every disturbance is a great new location for invasives to arrive and establish. So that's something you want to be careful about.
We had someone that mentioned, Henry Duncan said he found a bush honeysuckle sprouting in his favorite lilac bush in his backyard, and he noticed that the seed probably came from the bush across the street. So.
And I've seen it like up in the canopy of trees, like in a crack in a tree, like up there. And it's like, how did you get there, bush honey? And it got there from a bird moving in seed right up there. So
someone wanted to know about toxins that it puts out.
So bush honeysuckle, like a lot of other invasive plants, is thought to be somewhat allelopathic. So that means that it's producing chemicals, I think through its leaf litter, some plants through their root exudates that actually inhibit the success of other plants. And it's not just invasives that do this, our natives do too. So think of like black walnut, you don't get a lot of species growing right under a black walnut because it's doing that. And that's a way for those plants to minimize competition with others and kind of let themselves thrive. But that's one of the many tactics that invasive plants can use to their benefit. And it's not, natives do it too. So just something to keep in mind that, you might get some lingering impacts of bush honeysuckle that extend beyond just removing that plant.
I would say real quick too, if you're a woodland owner or somebody that has some more property and you have a big infestation of this stuff, there are some programs available to help cover some of the costs of these treatments through our Natural Resources Conservation Service, through a program called EQIP, or the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. So reach out to a local forester or other natural resource professional, and they can kind of connect you with those resources. So there's help out there, and we want to help you take care of it.
And we also have someone wanting to know if the chemicals you mentioned works on wild blackberries.
I have no idea, but great question.
Yeah, I would think they would. Certainly the glyphosate should work on
those
that.
chemicals.
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about the allelopathic.
I'm sorry.
No, herbicide for sure.
Yes.
The herbicide, I would think so, but I'll let Jacob comment on that.
I think it's always worth mentioning to make sure you read the labels and follow all the guidelines and everything that's laid out on the labels. And there's pros and cons of every management action that we take. And if you feel like the herbicides should be included in your overall management strategy, then that can be an effective approach. And definitely just pay attention and read the labels.
Yeah, Jacob, that's a really great point. It comes to mind glyphosate. It has two kind of different formulations, one for to be used around water bodies and then one, away from the water. So without reading the labels, you may not know that and you may end up causing a lot of problems. So really great advice.
Right. Well, it looks like that's all the questions we have for the two of you. Thank you for being on today. We always look forward to your
A great segment. You all are really doing some good stuff out there. So thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. It's cool.
Thank you.
Yep. Awesome. All right, Renee, keeping the show rolling.
Yes, so we're moving on to our tree of the week, and we're going to go ahead and hey, there's Lori.
Enjoy it. This is one of my favorite trees. I really like it, and it's beautiful this fall. So here's the sourwood.
All right.
I'm Laurie Thomas with the University of Kentucky Forestry and Natural Resources Extension, and I'm here with the tree of the week, the sourwood. Sourwood, Oxydendrum arboreum, is a member of the Ericaceae or heath family. It is the only species in the Oxydendrum genus. It is also known as sorrel tree or lily of the valley tree. Sourwood is a small to medium-sized tree that grows 40 to 60 feet tall and about 8 to 15 inches in diameter. It reaches its largest size on the western slopes of the Smoky Mountains. Sourwood develops a slender trunk and a small crown in dense stands. In more open situations, it forms a short, often leaning trunk dividing into several stout ascending limbs. It is a beautiful landscape tree, and the flowers are an important source for honey production. Sourwood is native to the upland forest of the southeastern United States. Like most of the Ericaceae, sourwood generally does not grow on soils of limestone origin, but is most commonly found growing in slightly acidic, well-drained soils. It is classified as somewhat shade-tolerant. Sourwood is an understory to mid-canopy tree in numerous upland forest types that include post, chestnut, black, and white oak, as well as Virginia, shortleaf, and loblolly pine. Sourwood is a deciduous tree with alternately arranged leaves, as you can see in the photo. The leaves are simple in form, lance-shaped, about 4 to 7 inches long, and the leaf margins are finely serrated, and the underside midrib has small hairs. The leaves are green above and pale below, and fall color is outstanding, with colors ranging from red to purple to yellow, and these can often be found on the same tree. And the leaves have a sour taste when chewed. Sourwood is monoecious with small white flowers. The flowers are about 1/4 of an inch long, and they're kind of urn-shaped, and they're in drooping panicles, and the flowers resemble lily of the valley flowers. The panicles of flowers have also been said to resemble a bony witch's hand. It is one of the latest flowering trees, with flowering occurring from late June to August. The flowers are insect pollinated, thus an important source for honey production in some areas. The fruit is a very small capsule. The 5-valved capsules are between 1/4 and 1/2 an inch long, and they're in those drooping panicles. When the capsules mature, they are dry and they split open and release very tiny 2-winged seeds. Fruit mature in the fall between September and October, and the seeds are gradually dispersed through winter by wind. Sourwood is also capable of vegetative reproduction through stump and root crown sprouting. It is a prolific sprouter. The bark is grayish-brown, it is very thick, and has deep furrows and scaly ridges. The ridges are often broken into identifiable rectangles. The wood of sourwood is hard and close-grained. The heartwood is a reddish-brown, and the sapwood is paler. Sourwood is not a commercially important timber tree, but the wood is used locally for tool handles, fuel, and mixed with other hardwoods for pulp. The wood was once used for wagon sled runners. Sourwood flowers are very attractive to bees, and sourwood honey is common in the South. The honey has a medium to light color with a heavy body, and it's slow to granulate. The flowers are attractive to butterflies and other insects. Natural hollows in older trees provide shelter for climbing reptiles and amphibians, bats, and other small wildlife. Sourwood is one of the species that is host for the fall webworm tents. The caterpillars in the tents attract birds by providing fall invertebrate food. Flowers are quite attractive to bees, and the honey is highly sought after. Sourwood is a great specimen tree. It's basically a tree for all seasons. It has lovely abundant flowers that open in midsummer, and they curve upward, creating a graceful effect at flowering time. There's excellent fall colors, some of the best in the South. The colors range from red to purple to yellow, and the hanging panicles of fruit capsules provide winter appeal. The national champion sourwood is in Amelia, Virginia. It's 130 inches in circumference, 74 feet tall, with a 47-foot crown spread. The Kentucky champion sourwood is in Bell County at the Cumberland Gap National Park. It's 68 inches in circumference, 66 feet tall, with a 32-foot crown spread. If you'd like to know more about champion trees, check out American Forest Champion Trees or check out the Kentucky Division of Forestry Champion Trees. Now for a few fun facts about sourwood. The flower blooms resemble lily of the valley flowers, hence one of its other common names, lily of the valley tree. The name sourwood is derived from the sour, pungent taste of the leaves. The Cherokee and the Catawba use the shoots of sourwood to make arrow shafts. Pioneers use the sap as one ingredient in a concoction used for treating fevers, the bark for chewing to soothe mouth pains, and a leaf tea for treating intestinal discomforts. The scientific genus name Oxydendrum comes from the Greek words oxys and dendron, which mean acid tree, and it refers to the sour taste of the leaves. I'm glad you joined me to learn about the sourwood, and I hope you get the opportunity to get out into your woodland, local park, or neighborhood and enjoy the stunning sourwood.
Well, thank you, Lori. We greatly appreciate that. And anybody have any questions, make sure to type them in the chat pod. And that is a very beautiful fall-looking tree, looks like to me.
Stunning. It is.
Yes.
Awesome. It really is.
Stunning or spectacular. Yes.
Yeah, very cool.
So can people buy seedlings, sourwood seedlings, if they want to put them in their yard?
You can. You'll need to go to probably a nursery, one of your local nurseries. They do not sell them through the Kentucky Division of Forestry, and they also don't sell them through Missouri Conservation, which also has a big supply of tree seedlings. They are, but you can, if you like, at a nursery, you would be able to find those. You want to make sure it's not the best tree on limestone derived soils, so kind of take that into consideration. But yeah, you could plant that. It's a great specimen tree, as I said in the video.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I was going to, someone asked, are they good for landscape? Yes, make a very nice landscape tree. You can put that with some black gum because you get some really great colors out there in your landscape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just as always, make sure you're planting the right tree in the right site, because they can get a little bit bigger, so you wouldn't want to plant it too close to the house or under power
line, right? Mm-hmm.
Could you keep them trimmed so they wouldn't get too big, or is that something that you shouldn't do?
Well, you're kind of fighting things, but
right.
Yeah, so you're best just to figure out what space you've got and then pick out a tree that you like its characteristics and that will fit in that space. That's the best way to do it.
It'll save you a lot of work later.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Well,
good
thank
job,
you, Lori.
Lori. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, someone asked if wildlife like to sample the leaves. If you don't know that, we could get Matt on here.
I don't know that. It doesn't have a real high palatability for deer. I mean, it's not like a favorite by any means, but they might sample some of those stump sprouts and stuff just because it's available, but it's not a high palatable one. Is that correct, Matt?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, it's like the new buds would definitely be still on the menu, but as they get older and they're not as highly desirable for most wildlife species.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you mentioned a sour taste. Is that one of the reasons?
I don't know.
I mean, it just
makes sense.
It just makes sense. I mean, if something's sour, you might be like, "Oh, I don't want to eat that."
And especially if there's lots of other stuff out there to eat. Exactly.
Right. There's a lot more out there for them to chew on.
than some old sour leaf. Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you all very much. Renee, this show is really a lot of fun and we learn so much. I really enjoy each of these segments that we get. It seems like each week I'm learning new stuff and I feel like I've been around this for a while, but it's great to learn more for sure.
Yes. And remember that all of our shows are posted on FromTheWoodsToday.com, and within usually a week we have them put up there. So today's show should be on by this time next week for sure. And you can always catch us live at 11 o'clock every Wednesday. If you go to FromTheWoodsToday.com, there's a watch live button that you can click, or you can always check us out on Facebook, and we're always here.
Yeah, no doubt. And please help us spread the word. We think there's a lot of big people out there that would enjoy this show. So please let them know about it and have them join us either on Facebook Live or on weekly via Zoom. So thank you all again. Really appreciate your all's support of this effort, and let us know if we can touch on any topics you all have interest in.
All right. Until then, we'll see you next week at 11. Take care.
All right, bye, everybody.